How's everyone doing? Good? Well, thank you for coming to BinaryStar. I do appreciate it. It's a beautiful place, isn't it?
Yes.
It just screams they spent too much money. Actually, when we first started doing business years ago here, we had this nice office we keep coming back to. It was in Osaka and Hamachi. There's a little hole in the wall, and the conference rooms were so small that if you had like 8 people there, everybody would be on top of each other. And I just imagine how far we've been able to grow. Jeremy, where are you at? There you are. That's my co-founder, IOHK, Jeremy Wood. We were in that conference room together. And the other thing is the air conditioning didn't work very well. So it got really hot. And also, they liked smoking in some cases in that room when they really weren't supposed to. So life has changed. Okay. So we've been working on Cardano now, the product most of you know me from that, or Ethereum, since 2015. And a lot's happened with Cardano. It's evolved quite a bit. We started in an aspirational state. So we said, hey, we'd like to be scalable, and we'd like to work with everything, and we'd like governance to be great, and be able to make hard decisions like when to fork and how to fork, and what should be in the fork. And we would like to be able to pay for stuff. We want a treasury, all these kinds of things. And thought about all these different ways of doing research and all these different growth models. And that's aspirational. It's all high risk, high return. You can do anything. It's like being 18 years old and showing up for college, and they tell you, you can be an astronaut, surgeon, lawyer. And then somewhere along the way, life starts beating you up, and you say, maybe I'm never going to be an astronaut. Somewhere along the way, you say, maybe I'm never going to be a doctor. And then you say, maybe I'll just be a consultant. Sounds like a lot of fun, right? So the same thing happened to us. We started aspirational in 2015. We wrote more than 40 papers. We worked with great universities like Tokyo Institute of Technology and University of Athens and University of Edinburgh. More than 20 of them have gone through peer review at major venues like CCS or Crypto. And one of the first and most major accomplishments of the project was mapping out the design space of where we could go and what would we be giving up for different directions. And that alone would be a major accomplishment for a DARPA project or a research project or an NSF grant or something like that. And I'm proud of it. We solved major problems along the way. We solved the proof of stake problem. When we first started doing research, if you were to ask the Bitcoin people or Blockstream people, and they'd say, does proof of stake work? They'd say, no, it's a scam. It's perpetual motion. Here's a paper from Andrew or somebody else, and here's why it doesn't work. We were a bit more optimistic. We said, okay, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work, but you can't just assume it does because someone built something and they haven't been hacked yet. You have to do actual research. So we wrote the GKL model, we wrote Ouroboros Classic, Ouroboros Praus, Ouroboros Genesis, we wrote some papers on incentives, we got more Ouroboros coming out, Ouroboros Chronos, Ouroboros Thos, and eventually Hydra. And along the way, we took the academic world with us, and we learned a lot. They learned a lot. Now everybody and their uncle has a proof of stake protocol. And there's an inevitability in our space that this is the way to go. It just makes sense. So we solved that. That's a great accomplishment. Second, interoperability, sidechains was a big deal. So what is a sidechain? The way I think about it is saying, you have a chain, and you have a chain. I'm like Oprah, right? You get a chain, you get a chain, you get a chain. Everybody gets a chain. And the thing is that I would like to be able to understand when you send me a transaction from your chain, if what I'm looking at is real. Does the asset exist? Let's say Litecoin Bitcoin. You send me some Litecoin. I don't have the Litecoin blockchain, but I'd like to verify that that's real Litecoin and you haven't double spent it. Pretty simple, right? Well, that's effectively what a sidechain is all about. It's the creation of proofs so that when you send a transaction from one ledger to another ledger, the recipient can actually tell you if it's real or not. And it can work for your own chain, so you get super awesome light clients, or it can work for a full ledger, like Litecoin to Bitcoin and so forth. So we wrote a lot of papers. We wrote things like NIPA-PALs. That's a crazy word. Non-interactive proofs of proof of work. We wrote things like proof of stake sidechains and so forth, and sent them to various different places. And there's a whole corpus of theory that we've built out, and now that corpus of theory is being reused by the industry. You may have heard of Fly Client, for example. You may have heard of things like Code of Protocol and other such things, and basically they're either using our work, inspired by our work, or competing with our work. So we've made great progress, and we can kind of check the box there for the high-risk, high-return research. Sidechains, proof of stake, are we done? No! We have other things to do, like you'd like these systems to be programmable. You'd like to tell the story of transactions. You'd like to write smart contracts, these types of things, right? Well, what the hell do you write them in? What is a smart contract? What's the point of these objects? And furthermore, how do they interact with the world as a whole? So let's say this guy right here wants to build decentralized Uber. Big company, it's a great company, right? So he says, oh man, I'm so excited. So what's he gonna do? He's gonna sign up for a class on Udemy or something, on Solidity, buy a master in Ethereum, read that whole thing, and he's, all right, I'm ready to go. So he's gonna start writing his application. Then he's gonna try to run it. And he gets 5 users, and it costs $12,000 a month to run. It's like, oh shit, this is not a good service. So what is he gonna do? He's gonna say, maybe I shouldn't write the whole thing and run it on Ethereum. I'm gonna pull parts of it out and run it on my own servers. Why? Because it's too expensive, too slow, and too hard to run it in that kind of infrastructure. It's not designed to be a global computer. Okay, so now he has 2 code bases. He has the stuff that lives in the system and the stuff that lives out of the system, and somehow they have to talk to each other, because that's the only way for the app to work. So that's why we have Web3 and all these other such things. But the problem is that these models are kind of kludgy and they weren't designed this way. We started with Solidity, and then we said, oh yeah, we kind of need something off-chain. We monkey-patched our way to get it there. So with Cardano, what we did is we said, look, programming language theory is among the oldest part of all of computer science. It's the first part, telling computers what you want to do. And people have been thinking about this since before computers existed. In fact, this is what led to the creation of the computers, with the Johnny von Neumanns and the Turings and the Alonzo Churches and the Gödels and so forth in the 1930s and 40s and 50s. So why don't we hire some of those guys with bigger, fluffier beards than me, and whiter beards than me, and have them come back and remind us of all the lessons that have been learned over the last 60 years. Why don't we start bringing those into space? Let's not have 20-year-old children that have never defined a programming language before go and pretend that they know how to write a programming language. We tried that. It's called JavaScript. We tried that again. It's called PHP. Did that make the web better or worse? Did that make your lives as developers better or worse? It cost $45 billion a year to maintain bad JavaScript code. Nearly twice as much for bad server code associated with websites. Never mind all the security problems. Never mind all the other horrendous problems of upgradability. So why in God's name would we want to go and replicate that all over again for your smart contract paradigm? Don't do it! It's the don't do drugs of our space. My God, friends don't let friends write Solidity. So what did we do? We said, let's hire Phil Walker. He created the Haskell programming language and a bunch of other guys. And let's start with a great, solid, nice foundational model. Something that takes into account the off-chain code and the on-chain code and bring them together into one file. And let's do a lot of work on the formal methods side and formal semantics and all these other word salads that white-bearded people care about. The long and the short is, we have something that you can write great, concise, nice programs that work. And you can verify that they're secure. You can verify that they terminate. You understand the gas cost. You know all these things because we have great theory that sits behind it. So we created the Plutus programming language, and it compiles into something that looks like System F Omega. That's a pretty old thing, it comes from the 80s. And we created the Marlowe programming language. And one of the magical things that emerged from this research effort over the last few years is that we recognize that this is a space that is not going to be controlled by general purpose programming languages. It's a fool's errand to go and try to write smart contracts in Java or JavaScript or C++. There's no point to it. Because when you're writing a smart contract, what are you doing? You're writing a contract mapping to a business domain, like supply chain, or medical record, or financial contract, or a legal contract. So why in God's name would you like to take something very general purpose and esoteric and try to somehow build this whole framework to make it work for that one domain? Why not write a special purpose language for that domain? A DSL. So we started doing that. Marlowe, for example, is a financial DSL. It's built just to do one thing, right? Financial contracts. And because it's built to do one thing, what does it mean? It means you can prove all kinds of interesting properties about your contracts, like they terminate, that your money can't be lost, all kinds of things that you'd probably like to be able to do for a multi-sig contract, or for a trade finance deal, or some exotic financial asset. Okay. But why can't we create more DSLs? Well, we should be able to, and we should be able to embed them and use them the same way we use the other ones. So, the on-chain code, let's do that with DSL. And if you need some programmability, give somebody something safe. Then the off-chain code gives people flexibility. So we started with Haskell, because that's what we know. And then we built backends to WebAssembly and to JavaScript. So you can have node packages and you can run the code in the browser. Pretty simple. And at some point you can open that up. And that's where the Java comes in. And that's where the C comes in, the C++ and the other things. Because ultimately that's where 95% of his application is going to come from. Okay, we did that. We wrote a lot of papers, one of which we rewrote 15 times to a point where actually the semantics of the language could fit on a dinner napkin. In fact, we called the semantics napkin. And we had an event last year in Edinburgh where we literally did put the semantics on a napkin and gave the napkins to people. Still have one of those napkins. It's a proud moment for me. So that was the third thing we did. Wow, great. We invested a lot of money in giving Phil Wonder a chance to redo Haskell and relive his glory days in the 1980s and enjoy having yet more citations. I think he's up to 25,000. That's great. Are we done? No, of course not. We're just getting started. You see, there's so many more things you can do in these projects. For example, how do you achieve scale? How do you go from thousands to millions to billions of users? This is kind of the quintessential problem of our entire space. And this is where people are starting to cheat a little bit. You've heard of certain platforms that shall remain nameless but are perhaps named after moons. Maybe have 3 letters. And they see things like 500,000 transactions per second. Okay, let's say for the sake of the argument, we're even close to that. Still controlled by 21 nodes, mostly running on Amazon. Is that a decentralized system? No. And it never will be. And they say, oh, who cares? You can vote for these people, even though 90% supply is owned by 1% of the people. And, oh yeah, even if you can't vote for them, do you really care? It's infrastructure. And I say, well, why is it any different than Azure or web services or Rackspace? Why? Makes no sense to me. So, you really need to think about scale with principles. Scale so that the things that were true when you had 10 users are still kind of true when you have 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 and so forth. And ultimately, you'd like to gain benefit as you gain users. BitTorrent is a phenomenal example of this as a approach. If you download Game of Thrones, you get the movie quickly. If you download Pee-wee's Playhouse, you get it slowly. Why? Because more people are downloading Game of Thrones, perhaps not season 8, than people are downloading Pee-wee's Playhouse. So the protocol speeds up as you gain users. Why? Because every user is adding resources. They're adding processing capability, they're adding network capabilities, they're adding data, storage capabilities. So why in God's name can't we build protocols to harness these additional capabilities as we gain users? That is what scalability is all about. So that no matter how many people you gain, you can always afford those people because they eat what they kill. They produce what they consume. They add more value than they take. That's how you get from 1 million to 1 billion and so forth. So it turns out that building those protocols for our industry is super, super difficult. And there's lots of things to think about. Because you also not only have to think about the engine of how many transactions you can process, but you also have to think about how to move them all around. The network side of things. How do you transmit terabytes of data every few minutes to various different people? Let's say you could process 1 million transactions per second, and each transaction is a kilobyte. It's a gigabyte every second. Who here has an internet connection that can keep up with that? Anybody? No one? Oh, this guy. Yeah, I know what you do. Okay, so about 1 guy in 1 million, right? So how do you be decentralized if no one can stay up to date with the system? So then you have to start saying, well, maybe we don't need to see everything. Maybe we need to shard it, and maybe you only see the things you're interested in. So we're going to have like a subscription model. So you get A but not B, C but not D, or something like that. So you don't download megabytes or gigabytes. You download kilobytes. When you need it, where you need it. Where sidechains comes in, right? Because instead of saying you have 1 chain or 1 ledger, you're going to have thousands of them, and you'll see things from different things. You've never seen them before, but somehow you're able to know that they're right when you see them. But then you have another problem. It's called availability. So what if you move to that model? Then what happens when Bob decides to turn the server off and he has the last piece of information? You'll never see it again. See? And this is the problem. See, every time you gain something in the design of a complex system, whether that be security, or that be availability, or perhaps more integrity, or perhaps more speed, you give something up. It's a trade-off. And that's the point of what we've been doing with Cardano and why it's taken so damn much time. We're moving at the speed of academia, we're moving at the speed of industry, and we're learning as we go along about what are the trade-offs. If we wanted to build a system that's really fast, how much Byzantine resistance are we going to lose? What changes in the network system are we going to have to make? How do we need to modify the data structures, the ledger design? What can we afford to throw away as we move in these particular directions? Every good systems designer has to do this. Meanwhile, we have to do this in a way that inevitably is not controlled by us or a federation of people, but by you, the general public. God help us all. We have to build a system that can update, upgrade itself, and make decisions about priorities, not in the short term, but in the long term. Not things to immediately raise the price or to maybe make it convenient for a particular actor who has a lot of influence, but things that will be good for the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, the sustainability of the system. So that was the raison d'etre of Cardano, kind of the purpose, the meaning, its hikigai, its way of life as a system. So where are we at? Well, we recently updated the roadmap, and there were 5 items on the roadmap. There was Byron and Shelley and Gauguin and Basho and Voltaire, and I've lived with these people for so long, I think they're like house guests in my damn basement that won't leave. And I love all of them. Byron was about introducing Cardano, the project, to the world. It was about delivering the project to the general public and saying, this is the philosophy, this is the technology, this is the approach, this is the code, this is who we are. And it was about getting it on exchanges, and it was about getting it on third-party wallets, and learning how to write APIs, and run a help desk, and do all the kinds of things you have to do if you actually deliver a product to a customer. It is super easy to be an academic. You write a paper, you publish a paper, and you move on. It is really hard to be an entrepreneur because you're accountable to the outcome of the work. You're accountable to the experience the customer has. If it's good, you get praised. If it's bad, you get hate mail or yelled at airports. In fact, one of my fondest moments was coming into London Heathrow Airport, and I walked the passport control, and right before I took my passport out, the passport control officer said, "Welcome to London, Mr. Hoskinson." The guy had ADA, and I was just thinking to myself, at what price point did he buy at? It's going to really determine my next 50 minutes of my life. It's either going to be a very pleasant experience or I'm getting the glove. So that's the consequence of being an entrepreneur. You're accountable. You have to release things. And that's what Byron was about, was becoming accountable, getting something out there, taking the hits, taking the jabs. But then at some point you have to turn over control. You've got to take the safety wheels off the bicycle. And that's what Shelley was about. Shelley is currently underway. We're just about ready for self-node testnet. Super excited about it. A week or two, depending on how long it takes to get the documentation up. And then a lot of people are running it. Some people are actually already running it. They jumped the gun on it. They said, oh, it's an open repo. We can just launch our own thing. That's okay. They submit bug reports, so that's nice. And at some point we'll wake up, we'll have a proper full testnet, we'll wake up, the incentives will be in, and somehow it's Shelley. What does that mean? Hundreds, if not thousands, of stake pools will emerge, and it will be a system that's considerably more decentralized than Bitcoin. That's a big win. And if we were just to stop there, it would probably be a great success of the project. But I really want to win. I really want to beat Ethereum. So we're not going to. It's got more to do. We've got to add smart contracts to it. That's what Gauguin's about. We've been working on that in parallel. And the roadmap will cover a lot of things. If you want to actually write them, you can do it right now. We got the Plutus Playground, we got the Meadow, we got tutorials on Udemy, courses you can sign up for. A book is coming out in July explaining how to write smart contracts in our system. Kind of hard to be called vaporware if you're writing a book about how to use the system. Okay, are we done? No, we got to make it scale. That's what Basho is about. Turns out the way we design World Wars makes it actually pretty easy to scale. Why? Well, because we have these things called epics. We have epics people. Okay, so you have all these snake tools that are doing things. The epics aren't linear. They can be done out of band. Epic 1 and 2 and 3 can all run at the same time. The same mechanism can be run. You used to have multiple elections. And then you used to have vertically some committee that serializes things and figures out which shard to put information and handle cross-shard communication. This hasn't been done before. Not hard to do it. So Basho is basically going to take that, we call it reverse Hydra, roll it out. And then the final component is Voltaire. That's where people get a treasury, they get the vote on Cardano improvement proposals, they get to do all these cool things. And that's coming 2020. And at that point, the 5 years is done. Proud of that. And then we get to talk about the next 5 years. How do we go from 1 million users to 1 billion users? And how do we wire this on to every legacy financial system in the world? And how do we go and change the way money works, and change the way all this infrastructure works, and change the way identity works? So what's the point of all this? Why are we building it? See, I often think about the use of cryptocurrencies starting with the most atomic element that we worry about in finance. It's the transaction. See, the transaction has kind of 4 things that are associated with it. The transaction has an asset. There's something it's carrying with it. US dollar, yen, Bitcoin, ADA, these types of things. But you never send a transaction just for the sake of sending a transaction. It has a story associated with it. I gave it to you to buy a taco. I gave it to you to mow my lawn. I gave it to you to keep you quiet. You know, there's always a story about that, depending if you're Trump or not. And it changes a lot if you hear about it. So there's metadata associated. That's the second thing, the story of the transaction. Transactions, are they just out in the ether? They're just floating around like stars in space? No, they're connected to people. They're connected to entities. They're connected to things. Alice, Bob, Microsoft, Google, US government, like IRS, Charles. There's a lot of that. And these things that they're connected to also have to live within a regulatory environment. So you may have heard of the FATF recommendations. You may have heard of things like the G20 and all these groups that are meeting and talking, ooh, what do we do about these mean, scary cryptocurrencies? How do we make them compliant? You may have heard terms like KYC and AML and all these other buzz phrases. Great. Well, your transactions, the people who issue them, the stories behind them, must live and comply with at least one regulatory regime, or multiple regulatory regimes, often multiple ones. Those are your 4 things that you have. Now, you know something, I never mentioned the word blockchain in any of this. Why? Because you don't need a blockchain for this element. These things can comfortably run on a money service business's servers, on a bank, some federated system. The blockchain component adds auditability and timestamping. It adds immutability to these things. Maybe you want that, maybe you don't. The point of where finance is going is less about blockchain this, cryptocurrency that, and it's about saying that this transaction with those 4 things is going to live either in closed or open systems. In the 20th century, they were closed systems by default. You didn't get to make the rules, you didn't get to choose the rules, you were told this is the way your money works. This is the way banking works. This is the way credit cards works. Do you want to play or not? The 21st century is the first time in human history where we actually do have a choice. We can decide, do we want to use open systems or closed systems? Do we want to use systems where we're in control of our identity, our money, the stories we tell behind the commercial transactions we make, the laws we want to comply with, and the assets we want to do business in, or do we not want to be in control of that? The point of Cardano is to give you a toolkit, an infrastructure, open infrastructure, to let you do these things and make these decisions, to help you reason through them. For example, we have this concept called contingent settlement. Has anybody heard of it? Okay, so what is contingent settlement? So let's say you run a not-for-profit, and you say, boy, it would be really great if people would send me donations. So what would be the problem if you just put up a Bitcoin address? The problem is that the money that's coming in is coming in without a legal agreement, it's coming out without any consent, it's coming in without any story connected to it. So you probably want to say that before you send me a transaction, you maybe sign a contract, a donation deed, saying, I agree that I'm donating money to you for use of these types of things, and I'm allowed to spend it on these types of things. Pretty simple, right? So how's that currently handled? He builds an infrastructure on the front end. Somebody has to go through a funnel, and then at the end of that entire process, then they get the address. Well, what if he could just embed all those terms and conditions right into the structure of the address, and it's all automated? So basically, they look at it, it points to a bid, they can look up a subscription channel, send a message, get the contract, the guy can hash it and sign the hash, embed it in the transaction, send it to him, and it all just happens without him ever even knowing. The money just shows up. But it shows up with the story, with the signed contract, and the terms and conditions satisfied. And what if the person sending it is in a bad jurisdiction, like Iran or North Korea or something that's on an OFAC list? It won't settle. because you put terms and conditions. You need to have geostamping. And if it's from a bad location, it won't settle, because here's my blacklist. Now you notice something here. I didn't program that into Cardano, but I support with that toolkit the tools to allow him to do that, or someone else to do that, and for him to adopt that library and bring it into his commercial transaction. That's the magic of these types of systems. Contingencies are modular and they are emergent. You can put as many as you want. You can put as many terms and conditions as you want into a transaction. You can put as much metadata into a transaction as you want. You can put terabytes. You just put it all into a hash and you're dead. And then when it's necessary, you can show it to the auditor, for example. And that's where we're going. Now, what does this mean? It means that finance becomes automated. And it also means we fundamentally change the conversations that we have with governments and with businesses. We know up front the terms and conditions of doing business with them. How they're going to use our data, what they're going to do with the money, the contractual relationships and associations, and those are set in stone because they're on a mutable data structure. They can't change them. They can't go back and alter the past and say, oh, no, that wasn't the way it was. It's there. And the tools are all open. And that means that they're programmable. So you can take them just as much as I can and modify them and add to them. And smart people far, far away can write them and give them to you, and now they're free for you to use. So it means you write it once, everybody gets to use it. It's called the smart cow effect. Okay? Furthermore, because of this composition, it means that for the first time ever, we can actually globalize finance properly. Because now you can just go to the regulator and say, if you want to tell me what the rules are, you just can't tell me, you have to write them down. And then what I can do is take those rules as software and put them into my transactions, and put them into my addresses. And so then it's your choice. Do you want to be in compliance with China, where they're probably going to know everything, have a backdoor into the system, maybe even have control over your money? Well, yes or no, it's your choice, but they wrote the rules down. At least you know what they are now. And the same for Japan, the same for China, America, the same for South Korea. Some are more libertarian, some are not. It makes the world a better place because now you start understanding the real consequences of doing business in different places. IOHK is a company, we operate in almost 20 countries. Imagine HR law in 20 countries. It's hard. You know, the thing is, nobody has ever in the history of doing business in a country with me said, oh, by the way, Charles, if you incorporate here, you put people here, you hire people here, here's how much money it's going to cost you, here's your receipt. No. It's like a magic discovery game. As one invoice after another comes in, one legal fee after another fee comes in, one surprise tax after another surprise tax comes in. I would love just to know what the hell the number is. Is it 10%, 20%, whatever that might be? We're moving to a world in this new financial system where you have that freedom. You'll find that out. 50 years, 100 years it might take, but we'll get there. The point of Cardano is to have go there with some principles and let everybody know what the rules actually are, what you can do theoretically speaking, where the science can take you, to implement it using formal methods and rigorous languages like Haskell so you know it actually works, and then ultimately to turn that control over to the community and let them set those priorities every 5 years. Where to go, what to do, and how to build the system. My own company, we're Pan-African in focus, mostly we're in Ethiopia, Uganda, actually where I'm going next. Georgia and Israel first, but then Uganda. And there we worry about entity systems and voting systems and all these other value-added things. But the heart is always the cryptocurrency side, and that's what's open finance, the open protocols. And we get to do that together with everybody. So those are my brief comments.